That night, my mom tied me to a chair in the bathroom, turned on the clippers, and said, "Go ahead, cry." When I screamed, "I don't want to," she just stared at me and replied coldly, "The more real the tears, the higher the donations." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in front of a camera, head completely shaved, eyes swollen, and telling nearly 300,000 subscribers that I had terminal skin cancer. Welcome to the Taylor family, where every emotion has to be directed. My name is Josh Taylor. I'm 14 years old and live in a quiet suburb outside Flagstaff, Arizona. But don't let the peaceful scenery fool you. Inside that sunny 2-story house, my sister and I lived like hostages for 3 straight years. It started when I was 10. My parents, Karen and Martin, turned YouTube into a full-time job. At first, it was harmless, cute family vlogs, cooking videos, toy reviews. But the moment clips like Ellie falls off her bike or Josh crying after getting yelled at went viral, they realized something. Pain, if staged well, could go viral. And viral meant money. They launched a channel called The Taylors Together, and it blew up. Over 500,000 subscribers. Then they branched out. I got my own channel, Brave Josh. My sister had Ellie's Smile. Every day had a script. Every emotion was a role. And if I didn't act well enough, I didn't get dinner. If Ellie didn't cry convincingly after falling down the stairs, she'd have to do the scene again and again. But that night, that was the worst. Mom strapped me to a chair, wrapped my arms and legs in duct tape, and turned on the clippers. I begged her to stop. She smiled. "People donate the most when they see your bald head, Josh. Makes you look like a chemo kid. Tragic sells." I've never seen colder eyes, not even when I looked in the mirror afterward. And then, the live stream started. I used to think getting my head shaved was the worst thing that could happen. I was wrong. That live stream was just the kickoff, the season premiere of a brand new tragedy series starring me and my little sister. Only we didn't get to choose our roles. Within 3 days of the video going live, the Taylors Together raked in over 40,000. People mailed handwritten letters, rosaries, and notes saying they were praying for little Josh to stay strong in his battle with cancer. Mom read every word with a giggle, then looked at me and said, "Better start writing thank you notes if you want breakfast tomorrow." Dad pulled out spreadsheets, breaking down which video titles made the most money, which clips with more tears led to higher donation spikes. "More crying equals more cash. Got it?" he said like I was some intern in an emotional marketing firm. After that night, I was never full again. Dad said I had to drop weight to look more like a real chemo patient. They cut my meals in half. Sometimes all I got was a dry slice of bread. Every morning, Mom powdered my face pale, shaded fake circles under my eyes, and dotted tiny red marks to mimic injection bruises. "You look so real," she whispered. "You'll thank me when we hit the gold play button." My sister Ellie was only 6. She used to be bubbly, always hopping around the living room playing hide and seek. Then one day, Mom announced to the camera, "Ellie's been diagnosed with progressive muscular disorder." I still remember how she stretched out the words like she was reading from a script on a daytime soap opera. They made me sit beside Ellie, hold her tight, cry on cue, and say she might never walk again. That video hit trending. The next day, they bought her special leg braces, custom made, metal screws and all, the kind you bolt directly into a child's calves. Ellie screamed all night. Blood soaked through her pillow. I rushed in with a towel to help, only to hear Mom and Dad arguing in the kitchen. Not about Ellie's pain. No, they were debating whether to film her haircut scene before or after the falling down the stairs clip. I used to believe my parents loved us. Maybe once long ago they were good people, but now all I see are two adults completely consumed by the numbers below a video. Dinner isn't a meal anymore. It's content. Birthdays aren't celebrations. They're concepts. And every time Ellie was in real pain, Mom would lean in and say, "Perfect. Hold that expression for the next shot." And me, I started realizing something terrifying. If I didn't find a way to end this, Ellie might not make it to her 7th birthday. The first time I realized I wasn't a kid anymore was a night just before Christmas. Outside, snow covered the front steps. Twinkling lights wrapped around the porch. Inside, Mom was clipping a lav mic onto my pajama shirt, getting ready to shoot a heartfelt moment from a dying child. That night's script: I'd wake up in pain, clutch my stomach, then sit by the window and tearfully watch the snowfall. She wanted me to say something haunting. Something like, "I wonder if I'll get to see snow next year." But I couldn't say it. I just sat there, blank face, eyes dry, silent. Then Mom slapped me. Not a punishment kind of slap. A wake up and feel something slap. She screamed, "Cry, you useless little brat. Your 6-year-old sister acts better than you." It didn't hurt, not physically. I just felt cold. Not the cold outside, but a kind of deep, hollow chill, like I'd just stepped out of my own body and was watching from a distance, watching a mother slap her child for not pretending hard enough to die. Later that night, I tiptoed into Ellie's room. She still had her braces on, like every night, but this time her white socks were stained red, blood. She wasn't asleep. She was trembling, whispering, "Josh, if I didn't act good enough, will Mom tighten the straps again?" I nodded, even though it crushed my chest to do it. That was the moment I fully understood. To my parents, Ellie wasn't Ellie anymore. She was a role, a pity symbol, monetized, and I was the living prop. The brave big brother who had to cry on cue, fall at the right angle, and always deliver the lines Mom wrote. A few days later, Dad printed out an emotion tracker. It had charts, scales ranging from mildly sad to total breakdown. Each video was rated for lighting, facial expressions, audience retention, shareability. He told us, "We need to be more professional. This family is a business. Everyone has a job." I wanted to scream, "I'm not an employee, I'm a child." But my lips stayed sealed, so I started writing everything down. In a little notebook I kept hidden, every bruise on Ellie's arms, every shoot I went hungry, every lie I was told to say. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I knew this much. If I didn't write it down, I was going to lose my mind, because in this house, truth had no place. Only scenes that could be staged, edited, and posted on YouTube. One night in late January, when it was nearly 10 degrees below freezing outside and the whole house was asleep, I opened Ellie's door. She wasn't sleeping. Just like every night, the braces were digging into her legs, bruising her skin, tiny spots of blood seeping through the fabric. When she saw me, she whispered, "I only acted once today." Mom wasn't happy. I clenched my jaw, said nothing. I just pulled the small screwdriver from my hoodie pocket and carefully loosened the braces. Once she drifted off to sleep, I stood up and walked straight toward the one door that was always locked, Mom's office. I didn't have a key, but I'd seen her stash the spare set in a drawer near the kitchen. Heart pounding, I searched in the dark and nearly froze when I heard the lock click open. Inside was a different universe. Pinned neatly along the walls were dozens of papers, video titles, viewership charts, emotional strategy drafts with bullet points like, Ellie fake hospital stay. Josh gets letter from heaven. Dad cries on camera during fake diagnosis. My hands were shaking as I turned on her computer. No password. The screen lit up with folders labeled bills, travel, recipes. All innocent looking. But inside travel, there weren't any vacation photos. Instead, receipts, invoices for paid actors, one for a man pretending to be a doctor, one for a compassionate nurse, and worse, a contract with a PR firm that specialized in generating fake emotional buzz for family YouTube channels. I felt sick. In the bills folder, I found scanned medical documents, photoshopped, forged signatures from real doctors at the Mayo Clinic, and I knew the handwriting was fake because it was my mother's. In that moment, it hit me. I wasn't living in a family. I was living inside a fraud machine, a calculated, well-oiled system of deception, and I was the only witness. I downloaded a few files, took photos with an old iPod I had hidden in my dirty laundry. I didn't know where to send them. My parents controlled all internet access in the house, but I needed proof. Something real, something outside of my fading memory, in case they tried to erase it all. Just as I was about to leave the room, I saw one last thing on her desk, a printed storyboard for the next video. The title bold and centered at the top. Ellie undergoes fake surgery. Josh sings her to sleep before chemo kicks in. I nearly threw up. I didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, when Mom walked into my room with my usual morning vitamin drink, I had a plan. Mom walked into my room at 7 a.m. Just like every morning. In her hand was the same plastic cup, 2 white pills and 1 pink. Her special mix of calming medication, what she always said was to help me stabilize my emotions. I took it like usual, but this time, I didn't swallow. I turned to the side and coughed softly, covering my mouth with my hand. In that split second, I slipped the pills into my palm. Then, when she turned her back, I tucked them into a hidden compartment under my desk, one I'd carved out months ago. Every pill I didn't swallow felt like a punch back. Small, quiet, but real. That night, once the house was asleep, I crept toward the Wi-Fi box hidden on top of the cabinet. I knew the password. Dad had once written it on a sticky note next to the router. My heart raced when I saw the signal light blinking. Wi-Fi was on. I grabbed my old iPod, the one where I'd stored everything. Photos of Ellie's braces, video outlines, audio recordings of Mom talking to that PR firm. I opened the browser and started composing an anonymous email to the school counselor. Then, I heard a soft sound behind me. It was Ellie. She stood there in silence, eyes puffy, her left leg wrapped in gauze. She didn't speak at first. Then, in the faintest whisper, she asked, "Josh, if I disappear, would you still remember me?" I turned around. "What are you talking about?" Ellie stepped closer and held my hand. "Today, I heard Mom on the phone," she said. She said, "If I can't walk anymore, the video will go viral." She said, "Real pain makes people cry more." I froze. Mom had said awful things before, but I never thought she'd actually let Ellie become permanently disabled just for a trending clip. Ellie squeezed my hand gently, barely breathing. "Josh, if we don't act well enough, Mom's gonna make sure we really suffer, right?" I couldn't answer. I didn't have the words. I just pulled her close, held her like she might vanish if I let go. For the first time, I was truly afraid of losing her, not to illness, not to an accident, but to our parents, the very people who were supposed to protect her. That night, I didn't send the email because I knew an anonymous cry for help wouldn't be enough. If I wanted to save Ellie, I had to do something bigger, something riskier. I had to make the world see what was happening inside this house. I picked Wednesday. That was the day Mom was usually in a rush. Parent meetings at the community center, and Dad would be out shopping for props for the next video shoot. They dropped me off at school early, part of their usual act, pretending I was still trying to go to school despite my illness. I walked straight into the nurse's office before classes started. Nurse Kendra looked up, slightly surprised, then softened, maybe assuming I had another headache or wave of fatigue, like always. But this time was different. I sat down, my hands trembling just a bit. "Can I talk to you privately?" I asked. Kendra nodded and gently closed the door behind us. I pulled a small plastic bag from my backpack. Inside were the pills I hadn't swallowed, a tube of lipstick my mom used to fake bruises, and a flash drive with photos and voice recordings from her office. I placed them on her desk. "I'm not sick. Ellie isn't either. None of it is real, except the pain." "That's real." Kendra looked at me for a long time. Then she exhaled, slowly, deeply. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. Every detail, from the night Mom shaved my head on live stream to the real screws in Ellie's leg braces, from pretending to be on chemo to Mom saying she'd fake surgical scars with a razor blade. I talked, and Kendra just listened, until finally she stood up, handed me a tissue, and opened her desk drawer. She pulled out a report form, hands slightly shaking, and began writing. "Evidence of suspected medical abuse. Immediate intervention recommended." I looked at her. "You actually believe me?" Kendra didn't answer right away. She walked around the desk, sat next to me, and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Josh, I should have seen the signs. I'm so sorry." I didn't know why I cried. It wasn't from sadness. It was the shock of finally being believed. No demand for newer proof, no skepticism in her voice, just belief. Kendra told me not to worry. She'd follow protocol. She would protect me and Ellie. She walked me back to class, whispering that she'd file the call to Child Protective Services that same day. But I forgot one thing. My parents weren't stupid. They had radar sharper than anyone, especially when someone started slipping out of their control. 2 hours later, both of them were at school. Mom came in crying like a pro. Dad brought an iPad showing a fake doctor on FaceTime, a thick stack of medical records in hand. I stood next to them in the principal's office, watching Nurse Kendra's face start to shift. The documents looked real. The video call was too convincing, and every word out of my mother's mouth, perfectly rehearsed, chillingly flawless. He refuses treatment because he's embarrassed about being called the cancer kid. He carries makeup to cover his symptoms. You understand, don't you? I could feel it all unraveling, the truth slipping through the cracks. I was once again the delusional kid, and my parents, the brave heroes coping with the sick child's spiral. That afternoon, they pulled me out of school, and that night, Dad called me into the kitchen. That night, I didn't eat dinner with the family, not because I was grounded, but because I wasn't allowed to. Mom said I was too emotional after what happened at school, that I needed to rest, but I knew the truth. They were afraid I might talk to a teacher, to a delivery guy, to anyone. And the tighter they felt control slipping, the tighter they clamped down. I was in my room, trying to scribble a few lines in my notebook, when Dad called me downstairs. His voice wasn't loud, but it was cold as ice. When I walked in, he was already seated at the kitchen table. A small paper pharmacy bag sat in front of him. He slowly pushed it across the table. My name, Josh Taylor, was on the label, prescribed by Dr. Huxley, a name I'd never met in real life but had seen too many times on Mom's fake documents. From now on, Dad said, calm and measured, 2 pills every day. No exceptions. We won't let you spiral again. You need help." I shook my head. "I don't need that." I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. It was barely a whisper, and maybe that's what set him off. He stood up, rounded the table, grabbed my jaw. Hard. I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He opened the bag, took out a pill, shoved it into my mouth, then clamped his hand over my chin, tilted my head back, and poured water down my throat. I couldn't breathe. I tried to spit it out, but his hand was covering my mouth. When he finally let go, I doubled over, coughing, tears streaming down my face. My throat burned. My tongue went numb. My vision blurred. I'd never seen Dad like this. He wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. His eyes were empty. He stood there for a minute, just watching me, like a doctor checking for side effects. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Good. Now you understand. Resistance isn't an option anymore." I wanted to scream back, "This isn't help. This is prison." But my tongue wouldn't move. That night, I sat in my room, head heavy like concrete. The lines I meant to write vanished from my mind. My hand shook so bad I couldn't hold a pen. The words on the page blurred and twisted. Just like my thoughts, they didn't just want me quiet. They wanted me gone, slowly, day by day. Not with violence, with pills. The next morning, I woke up with a hammering headache. Mom brought me a glass of milk already poured, and I smelled something off. They'd started mixing the drugs into my food. No more chances, no more time. And I knew if I didn't fight back soon, Ellie would be next. A week after I was forced to swallow those pills, everything became foggy. I couldn't write in my journal anymore. My hands shook too much. Sometimes I'd drop my spoon at breakfast. Sometimes I'd stare at a sentence for minutes and not understand what it even said. The pills weren't calming me down. They were erasing me. But Ellie was worse. She started skipping lunch at school. One morning, she collapsed on the walkway as soon as she stepped out of the car, clutching her legs in pain. Mom said, "Great job, baby. That's real commitment." But I saw the swelling. The bruises, purple and yellow, running up her shins. I used to think Mom was just faking illnesses for Ellie. Now, it looked like Ellie's body couldn't fake anything anymore. That afternoon, when Mom went to the grocery store, I snuck into Ellie's room. She had fallen asleep on the floor, braces still strapped to her legs. I took off her socks and froze. The skin on both sides of the braces was torn open. There was a smell, old blood, signs of infection. I quietly cleaned her legs with warm towels, rebandaged her wounds. She opened her eyes and looked up at me, tired. "Hey, why didn't we film this time?" she asked softly. "Mom said, if I'm in enough pain, we don't need a video. People will still donate." I had no words. She was 6. And she couldn't tell the difference between real pain and a scripted scene. That scared me more than anything else ever had. That night, I overheard Mom on the phone in the kitchen. She sounded frustrated. "If we don't post a new video, GoFundMe will freeze the account. I don't need an actual surgery. I need Ellie to look like she had one as soon as possible." I started shaking. Not just because of what she said, but because I finally understood. Mom wasn't going to stop. Not until Ellie truly lost her ability to walk. Not until I was too drugged to speak clearly. Not until we were both just puppets in a perfectly curated family reality show built entirely to make money. That night, I stuffed my iPod into my hoodie pocket, along with the SD card that held all the backups, photos, recordings, videos. And then I wrote a single sentence on the inside of Ellie's leg bandage. "If you're reading this, please help us." I didn't know where I'd send it, but I knew what I had to do. Create a moment so loud, so raw, that the world wouldn't be able to look away. And I'd only get one shot. I picked Saturday. Mom would be busy prepping a new script for Ellie, and Dad would be out in the garage fixing the camera equipment. I had 15 minutes. Not enough to explain everything, but maybe enough to raise suspicion. I grabbed the old iPod, outdated but still able to connect to Wi-Fi if I stood close enough to the kitchen router. I opened the old admin app for the Brave Josh channel, still over 80,000 subscribers. Mom had forgotten to remove my access. I hit go live. The screen blinked, the camera turned on, my face appeared, sunken cheeks, bald head, dark circles under my eyes, lips cracked from the meds. I stared straight into the lens. Hi, if you've ever watched my videos, I need you to know something. I don't have cancer. My sister's not paralyzed. My parents made it all up. They forced us to act. And when we couldn't act anymore, they made it real. My heart pounded like a war drum. I spoke fast. I showed evidence. Photos of Ellie's leg braces, the fake surgery plan, audio files of Mom talking to the PR team. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. They drug my food. They force antipsychotics down my throat. They tied my little sister to a bed to film a post-surgery recovery that never happened. Please, someone call the police. Come to Flagstaff, Arizona. The address is... The kitchen door slammed open. Mom. Her face was frozen, phone in hand, eyes locked onto the iPod screen. Josh, turn it off. I stepped back, gripped the device tighter. No. I heard footsteps behind me. Dad, his arm locked around my shoulders. Mom snatched the iPod from my hands. She still wore that fake, gentle mom smile, but her eyes were pure fire. My son is having a minor psychotic break, she said, staring into the camera. Please understand. We're ending the live stream to protect his privacy. The stream cut. They dragged me to my room, locked the door. Mom didn't yell. She just looked at me and said, "You just destroyed this family." Then she turned to Dad. Find the admission papers. Call transport. We're not waiting any longer. And I understood. I had just burned down the one bridge they used to hide. And now, they were done pretending. They were going to send me away. For good. The next morning was eerily quiet. No cameras. No vlog rehearsals. No fake temperature checks from Dad. Just the sound of a suitcase dragging across the hallway, hurried packing, and Ellie quietly sobbing in the room next door. I knew what was coming. My parents had scheduled transport services, the kind that forcibly escort teens to rehab centers or psychiatric facilities. I'd seen the videos before. Tall men in gloves, stone-faced, carrying kids out of bed while they were still asleep. I wasn't asleep. I didn't dare sleep. Around noon, I heard the van pull up outside. A gray one. 2 men in polo shirts stepped out and exchanged a few quick words with my dad. I didn't cry. I just glanced at my desk, where the small wooden box with the SD card still sat, hidden in the double drawer. I prayed someone would find it someday. Heavy footsteps echoed up the stairs. A man knocked gently on my door. Calm voice. Josh, we're here to escort you to your treatment center as authorized by your parents and legal paperwork. I didn't respond, but I stood up. And in that moment, as the door opened, I saw her. Aunt Ruby, my mom's older sister, the one we hadn't seen in years, the one who'd cut off contact a long time ago. She stood at the front door, holding a manila envelope and a phone. Recording. Wait, she said loud and clear. I'm the emergency legal guardian. This is a report from the school nurse and the live stream your family tried to erase yesterday. Everything's been forwarded to Child Protective Services. Mom stepped out. Dad froze. One of the transport agents asked, "Ma'am, do you have verified legal authority?" Aunt Ruby pulled out the paper, court signature, case file number. The live stream footage was submitted to the police. And I think, she turned to my mother, "this time, you won't be able to delete everything like before." The police arrived 10 minutes later. The whole street went quiet. Mom burst into tears. Not the trembling, performative crying she did on camera, but the raw, panicked kind. The kind people cry when they've been caught lying for too long. Dad just slumped into a chair at the dining table, head in his hands. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding Ellie's hand. She was shaking behind me, legs still bandaged, but for the first time, her eyes weren't blank. For the first time in months, I heard sirens that meant real help. I saw real medical staff, and I felt the presence of adults who were actually there to protect us, not film us. The door was open, and finally, someone was listening. The police didn't arrive with sirens. They came quietly, the way truth always does. Patient, silent, but unstoppable. 3 officers in uniform stepped into our home with paperwork in hand. A female officer turned to my mom and said gently, "We've been authorized to conduct an emergency health check on 2 minors in this household and to confiscate any materials related to medical documentation." My mother stood frozen. My father said nothing. Ellie and I were separated, taken into different rooms. A paramedic began examining Ellie, slowly, gently, like she might shatter if touched too hard. They found signs of deep infection, muscle and bone damage from over-tightened braces. "She needs a hospital, now," someone said into a radio. They drew my blood too. The results made everyone fall silent. My sedative levels were 3 times higher than the safe dosage for an adult. No one could understand how a 14-year-old boy ended up with that much antipsychotic in his system. But I knew. And then, while searching Mom's office, one officer found the hard drive we all thought had been wiped. It wasn't. Inside were hundreds of files, content outlines, forged contracts, photoshopped images, fake medical documents, and worst of all, an email. "If Josh won't cooperate, I'm willing to increase the dose. He won't remember anything." And audiences tend to sympathize more with someone who shakes. An actual voice memo from my mom to a so-called media image consultant, as she called him. That was the final nail. That very day, GoFundMe officially froze our account and released a statement. "We have received verified evidence that this fundraiser was based on deception. All donations have been locked pending investigation." Our YouTube channel was mass reported. Videos vanished from search results. Neighbors whispered. Reporters started showing up. But the moment that truly broke my mother wasn't the police. It wasn't the headlines. It was Aunt Ruby. When she looked her sister in the eye and asked, "You did all of this for what? For money? For fame? Or just so you wouldn't feel average?" And my mom broke down. Not the camera-ready kind of tears. The kind you cry when you know the curtain has finally dropped. That afternoon, Ellie and I were taken to the hospital for treatment. No cameras, no scripts, no lighting rigs, just the nurse calling us by our real names, just the doctor asking softly, "How are you feeling today?" And the sound of Aunt Ruby quietly exhaling as she signed the emergency guardianship forms. For the first time in years, I felt human, not a character, not a patient, not the brave son, just Josh. 1 year after we left the house in Flagstaff, I still wake up some nights drenched in cold sweat, ringing in my ears, the blinding glare of a ring light in my face, and Mom's voice echoing, 3, 2, 1, action! It took me months to adjust to a life without cameras, without pills, without a role I had to perfect. Ellie's now in first grade at a small elementary school in San Diego, where no one knows she was once the most beloved child star on social media. She still goes to physical therapy 3 times a week. The doctors say her legs might never fully recover, but Ellie told me, "That's okay. I like walking slow. You get to see more things that way." As for me, I joined a creative writing group at the local community center. I don't tell stories the way I used to, not for pity, not for clicks, but just to remind myself that I still have a voice. We live with Aunt Ruby now in a small apartment near a park. She bakes cookies every Sunday and always leaves a batch for Ellie to decorate. For me, she buys a new journal every month, leaves it quietly on my desk, never saying a word, but I know she's hoping I'll write again, and I have. The trial ended in March. My parents received a combined 12-year sentence for child abuse, financial fraud, and falsifying medical documents. When the judge asked my mother if she had anything to say, she whispered, "I thought I was doing something good. I just wanted the world to see my kids were special." I get it. And that's the problem. Sometimes adults call it love, when what they really want is control. To build a world where their children stop being people and start being products, props, content. We lost our childhood to a camera lens. But I don't want to live stuck in that past forever. I want to write a new story, one where Ellie doesn't have to perform to be noticed, and I don't have to suffer to be called strong. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Not everyone has a camera pointed at their pain, but everyone deserves to be heard. If you're hearing this and you've ever felt invisible, trapped, or only loved when you're playing a role someone else assigned to you, please remember, you don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love. We survived, and now we're finally living for real.